Hey Noah, the other day I was reading through Nehemiah 8 and 9, and in chapter 9, we are given a history lesson of God's response to the people's unfaithfulness. This is the longest recorded prayer in the Bible, and it summarizes how God has remained faithful throughout history of the unfaithfulness of his own people. Does that not sound familiar to you? Take some time to read over chapter 9 and ask, what is God showing about himself and what is he showing about you? As I was reading it, I was blown away by God's faithfulness to his people and even to me. How many times have I sinned against him? It's been countless, and I was made speechless. You know, the people are here once again praying for mercy from the covenant-keeping God. And as the prayer continues on, there is an unfolding of history that shows how God acts graciously and mercifully to his people. Starting with creation to the covenant he made with Abraham, how he delivered his people out of Egypt, to how he provided for them in the wilderness, and how God established a kingdom for them in a rich land. As we walk through the history lesson, you get stopped twice as God is pouring out his faithfulness on his people as the covenant-keeping God. The people confess twice of their unfaithfulness. You know, is this not true for you and for me? Look back at your life. Mark all of those times that God had faithfully provided for you to do the tasks that he had called you to do. Think of all the times you thought you had no strength to keep going, yet God faithfully provided. Now think of all the times that you were unfaithful to him. You know, in Nehemiah 9, you see this sentence, abounding in steadfast love. God's people are repeatedly calling out to a merciful God. God's covenant and steadfast love is always the basis by which God's people approach him. Over and over again, as you read the Bible, you are reminded of the God who is abounding in steadfast love. I was once asked, why I needed to talk about the gospel every time I preached, and the person wanted more practical sermons to help them get through the week, and I didn't really know how to answer them at that moment. In the context of the conversation, I was seeking to listen more than anything, and I think it threw me off because it was coming from someone who claimed to be a strong Christian, who read their Bible regularly. And as I reflect on that question, I would have this response. I would respond with a question of my own. How is the gospel not practical? The most practical thing for the Christian who has been beaten up all week is to be reminded of the abounding love of our God. Numbers 14:18 says that the Lord is slow to anger and abounding in steadfast love. When do I need to be reminded of that? Especially in a world of a pandemic and isolation, God most impressively showed his great patience to you and to me when he sent his son to save all who trust in him. What else gives strength to get through the week? What else would give me the boldness to walk across the street and to share the hope that I have? What else gives me humility? What else gives me strength to get out of bed? What else gives me light in the midst of darkness? What else gives me strength to walk through sorrow and suffering? What else would cause me to help others who are undeserving as I am? The gospel is central to all that we do and are, and for the Christian who truly understands what God has done for them, that doesn't leave them unchanged. It changes them to the core. So praise God. In 2 Corinthians 1 verse 20, it says, for all the promises of God find their yes in him. That is why it is through him that we utter our amen to God for his glory. In Nehemiah 9, the people of God knew that God was full of grace and truth as they reflected on their past. For you and for me today, we can reflect on these verses like we see in John 1 verses 14 to 18. We see grace and truth itself embodied in Jesus Christ. Be blown away by what God has done for you through his son, Jesus Christ. Let that encourage you this morning as you go on your day. Reflect on the gospel. Reflect on what He has done for you, how He has remained faithful even when you have been unfaithful. He is abounding in steadfast love. Become speechless.